Everybody's here. Going to call the meeting to order. Washoe County Planning Commission meeting Monday, October 21st, 2019. Can we have a determination of a quorum?
Larry Chesney,
Present.
Francine Donchik,
Present.
James Barnes,
Here.
Thomas Bruce,
Here.
Sarah Shavelicek is absent, Philip Horan,
Present.
Kate Nelson. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Barnes, would you please join me? The pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mr. Edwards, could you read the ethics law announcement for us?
Commissioners are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the commission today, 1, you have received a gift or loan, 2, you have a pecuniary interest, 3, you have a commitment in a private capacity, such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or 4, you have provided representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered tonight, then you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Commissioners are also reminded that under the Planning Commission rules, if you have had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the commission today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Lloyd, would you please give us the appeal procedure?
Yeah, most decisions rendered by the Planning Commission are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Planning Commission and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is signed by the Planning Commission Chair and/or the Secretary of the Planning Commission, filed with the Secretary of Planning Commission, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and application fee.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Okay, we'll move on to general public comment.
We have no requests for public comment.
Seeing no request for no public comment. Do we have a move to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Moved by Commissioner Donchik and thank you, and seconded by Commissioner Bruce. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Then we'll move on to public hearings. Open the public hearing on special use permit case number SW 15-002 Turquoise, Nevada.
All right, this is for hearings, discussion, and possible action to approve an extension of time for the approval of a special use permit for a 60-megawatt solar energy project. The project includes a 585-acre photovoltaic field, a 60-megawatt substation, and a 120 kV transmission line connecting the proposed new substation to the NV Energy Pa-Ra substation. The project also includes up to 7,200 cubic yards of grading. The proposed extension will grant the applicant 2 additional years until September 30th, 2021 to complete construction plans and obtain building permits for the project. Here representing Washoe County is Senior Planner Roger Pelham.
Okay, Roger. Are there any disclosures by anybody in the commission, either ethics or ex parte? None. Go ahead, Roger. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I have no
public
particular presentation this evening. The applicant has completed about 20% of the project. About 80% is remaining. We're actually reviewing at least one set of plans now for grading. They just need a little bit of additional time to complete and get the remainder done. The applicant's representative is here if you have any particular questions. Otherwise, for any policy or process questions, here I am.
Any questions by any members of the commission?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Is there any public comment on this issue?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. Any questions by members of the commission or staff, of the staff? Then I'm going to close the public hearing. And I guess there's no discussion, we'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approve an extension of time of 2 additional years until September 30th, 2020 to complete construction plans and obtain building permits for special use permit case SW15-002 Turquoise Nevada LLC, subject to previous conditions of approval, having affirmed all 5 findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.810.30.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Doncheck and a second by
Mr. Barnes.
Mr. Barnes. All right. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Let's see. Let's move on to item 7B. Resolution to initiate Development Code Master Plan and Regulatory Zone Amendments for the Tahoe area.
Okay. This is for possible action to adopt a resolution initiating amendments to the following. 1, the Washoe County Code at Chapter 110, Article 220, the Tahoe area, commonly referred to as the Tahoe area modifiers. 2, the Washoe County Code at Chapter 110, adding Article 220.1, Tahoe area design standards. 3, the Washoe County Master Plan, Volume 2, Tahoe area plan, including changes to the master plan map. And 4, the Tahoe area regulatory zone map. These amendments are meant to ensure the conformance of Washoe County's plans with the 2012 regional plan adopted by the the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency by including but not limited to the following. A, adopting the TRPA's permissible uses set forth in TRPA Chapter 21 in lieu of Washoe County's allowed uses set forth in Article 302 of the Washoe County Development Code. B, adopting TRPA's master plan land use categories in lieu of Washoe County's master plan land use categories set forth in Article 106 of the Washoe County Development Code. C, adopting neighborhood plans utilizing the boundaries and allowed uses of TRPA's plan area statements in lieu of Washoe County's regulatory zones set forth in Article 106 of Washoe County Development Code. D, adopting TRPA's implementing plans by reference when necessary, including but not limited to portions of TRPA Code of Ordinances and the Shore Zone Plan. And E, adopting other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining to thereto. And representing Washoe County is Senior Planner Eric Young.
I'm going to open the public hearing and staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Eric Young, Senior Planner from Planning Division. This is the initiation of the Tahoe Area Plan Update. I'm going to be very frank and remind you that you did this almost exactly a year ago, and that this presentation is extremely similar. We have some advantages now with the time that's passed, having the ability to give you a better picture of what the developing plan may look like and where it may go. But this is a very similar procedure to what we did about a year ago. We are now close enough along the way that we can do it again and begin in earnest some of the public review and final development of the plan, and then move on through the rest of the public hearing processes.
Mr. Chair, real quickly, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Young. Could you please, for the record, call for disclosures on this? I don't think they were made
Sure.
before.
Do we have any disclosures by commissioners on ethics or ex parte communication? Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. As you may also remember, this isn't the first time that county staff has attempted to do a Tahoe area plan update. In November of 2017, I believe it was, we brought forth a plan that attempted to update the plan, but the failure with that one was that it really didn't encompass this first important, unified, overarching goal that we adopted for this version of the plan. And it's really committing to this goal and moving forward with it that has really helped us make sincere progress on this update. And that's to create a unified approach to planning and development based on the TRPA regional plan for the entire Tahoe planning area. I think most of you probably understand that currently Washoe County tries to maintain a parallel system with its zoning sort of laid on top or underneath the TRPA's planning regime. So the overarching goal of this particular update is to adopt one unified approach for the entire area. Other important goals are, of course, to be consistent with the 2012 Tahoe Regional Plan. That's a groundbreaking plan. All the jurisdictions in the basin need to conform to it, just like as we'll be launching into master plan updates for the rest of our master plan now that the regional planning agency down here is adopting a new plan. It's exactly the same process that we have to conform to the regional plan in the Tahoe area. That regional plan has been adopted for some time, and now all the jurisdictions are coming along and getting to be consistent with that plan. And then, of course, something that we always do, just modernization and updating. Real quick background here. We've had our plans in place since 1996 with very minimal amendment and changes. If you can think about having a plan down here in the meadow somewhere that hasn't been amended since 1996 or has had only a few small amendments here and there since 1996, that would be astonishing to think of that. And that's kind of what we have up there at the lake, a plan that has been in place since 1996 with very few amendments. The 4 community plans that were adopted, we're all familiar with. I don't know that you're familiar with what's called the plan area statement, which is all of the rest of the incline area outside those community plans that you're familiar with is covered by something called the plan area statement that we haven't been able to determine whether we ever actually adopted them or not, but we were required to back in the late 90s. So since that adoption, Washoe County, the other jurisdictions, we have tried to maintain this dual approach. We've all really put our foot down and been really stubborn about maintaining our own planning approach. The one that we have down here, try and make it fit up there. So we weren't the only ones to do that. Most of the jurisdictions gave that their best shot. It's very difficult to administer. I think some of you are probably familiar with the struggle staff has had with that dual approach over time. Landowners struggle with it. It's another layer of complication. But regardless of that, it's been a difficult choice to make to get rid of that dual system and adopt one consistent system. But the adoption of the 2012 Tahoe Regional Plan really puts some fire under everybody to get on board. It creates the ability to do these area plans. It in a sense, requires us to do an area plan for certain areas. Washoe County has decided to do our area plan for all of our jurisdiction. Everybody's been trying a lot harder with this new regional plan to understand it and adopt a plan that matches it. As you know, our first attempt back in 2017, we tried to come into conformance, but because we were maintaining that dual system, it just wasn't going to work. So, you know, that's what I refer to here as some initial difficulties. Well, that's the struggle to just really take the leap and get on board with the TRPA system. So that's what we believe this draft does, and we feel like all the jurisdictions up there, including Washoe County, are doing a better job of understanding what the requirements are, what's expected of us, and how to conform with that regional plan. So what specifically are we asking you to do? We're asking you to initiate amendments to the master plan, the development code, the regulatory zone map for that whole area. Now, when we say area plan down here, we're familiar with our area plans. We're talking about just a small little document that's a master plan document. It's a little bit unfortunate that TRPA uses that same terminology, area plan, because they don't quite mean exactly the same thing in the basin as they do down here. In the basin, the area plan includes all of these implementing documents, the development code, the master plan document, all the chapters on the master plan. It includes all the maps. So it's one document that's kind of a comprehensive document that has from the master plan right through the development code and the implementing documents as well. So when we say we have to amend the Tahoe area plan, it means we have to amend that whole package. So we're not just asking you to amend that one little master plan, we're asking you to amend all of the codes and planning approach that's applicable to the Tahoe Basin. So what are the master plan text amendments? Well, we're changing those community plans that you're familiar with, North State Line, Incline Commercial, Incline Tourist, and Ponderosa Ranch. And then, of course, we have to change the map. Our master plan map has master plan categories that you're familiar with: rural residential, suburban residential. Those are the categories that you're familiar with. TRPA utilizes a different set of categories for their master plan categories. So once again, instead of trying to have a dual system, we're going to adopt their categories and their definitions in the Tahoe area. If you're familiar with our website, this is what those documents look like. The first one, the Tahoe Area Plan, is that master plan document that includes all the different chapters for land use, conservation, transportation, recreation. All of those are included in that. And then there are those 4 community plans. So all of those are one of the things that we're asking you to amend as part of the master plan initiation. And then, of course, like we mentioned, the map has to change as well. So the development code has to change as part of the package. What are we asking you to change as part of that package? You're familiar with the concept that we use in our development code called the modifiers. It's that article, Division 2, all of the Article 200s, all of the different area plans, all the different planning areas have a little chapter of modifiers that modifies the development code specifically to them. The Tahoe modifiers, as you can imagine, are critical. They're critically important. They're substantially different from the other modifiers. It's more of a document. It's not just a handful of pages like the other ones are, a few sections here and there. It's a development code designed and intended for the Tahoe area to meet the community's expectations as well as TRPA's expectations. And then we're asking you to include a new article that is 20.1, which would be the Tahoe Area Design Standards. Back in '96 as well, design standards were adopted for the community plan areas. We are required to maintain those until we go through a process to change them. And so, once again, we had difficulty determining whether the county had ever actually officially adopted those back in the 90s. It appears that perhaps we didn't. It's time to adopt them. They exist, and it's the easiest way that we've found to incorporate them into the development code is as a .1 kind of a new article. So we think that should work pretty well. Those are the same design standards. There's very few changes to those. So those are the design standards that have been intended to be in place since the late 90s. change to the regulatory zone map. Now this might be one of the biggest obvious changes in creating this unified planning scheme. So what this means is in the Tahoe planning area, we're no longer going to have medium-density suburban, low-density suburban, general commercial, neighborhood commercial, all those regulatory zones that you're familiar with that we utilize down here in the Meadows. What we're proposing to do is to transform the community plans and those, what we referred to earlier as the plan area statements, that currently do exist and are the regional plan rule of law for that area, to transform those into individual zoning districts. So each plan area statement and each community plan will be its own regulatory zone with its own set of uses, and when necessary, when it's called for by the regional plan, its own set of design standards or what they call special policies relative just to that neighborhood. And so by making this change, this is the one single change that really helps us get over that hump to establishing a unified planning scheme up there. We won't have to figure out, okay, you're in this plan area statement, but you're also MDS, medium density suburban, so how do those combine? And that's been confusing for everybody since 1996. So we're gonna have one set of rules that doesn't need to be interpreted any longer, that doesn't need to be combined with another set of rules. Fortunately, that one set of rules is not different from what currently exists. It's the current rules that TRPA has had in place and that the county adopted some amount of them in the 90s, and we've been implementing them. So this doesn't really amount to a broad change in the way things are implemented, but it amounts to an enormous change in the customer service ability and the ability to understand the plan. In some areas, it does create that long-anticipated ability to do mixed use. The overlaying the county zoning has often prohibited the ability to do mixed use, and many of the areas up there where the original intended concept was mixed use. And this dual system has prevented that. So hopefully this one change will really be a significant bonus for the community going forward. So I know that those are the changes that we're asking you to go through. Master plan changes, development code changes, and regulatory map changes. The next steps are after initiation. We're going to have a meeting with the TRPA later this week with what's called their Regional Plan Implementation Committee. That's a review of a draft plan to let us know sort of whether we're on base, whether we're off base, if there's any gaping holes that they'd like us to fill. Sort of it's similar to what we're doing here tonight, but it's at the TRPA level, the TRPA letting us know, we think you're good to move forward, or here's some things we need you to address before you move forward. So that happens this Wednesday. Then we anticipate making whatever the adjustments they may ask for, and moving forward to a workshop, or what they call the neighborhood meeting, in right before Thanksgiving. For the community to come out. Everybody, all properties in the community will be noticed. It'll be a huge blanket noticing of the community. We'll have it at a large space. Everybody will have the ability to comment in that time. During that time, we'll also be doing the more in-depth agency review, where we send it out to all the relevant agencies to review and get back to us. So we'll be hearing from the community over December. We don't know yet whether we'll come back to you for a public hearing in January or February, but that's the time frame that we'd be looking at. It kind of depends on all that public comment that happens from agency review and the neighborhood meeting. You know, we'll make the adjustments. If we have to make any big adjustments, TRPA would like us to come back to them. We're not anticipating any big adjustments. After we come back to you for a public hearing, then we would go to finish the county process, which would mean go to the board for the 2 hearings for the development code and then the master plan. Then it kicks back to TRPA for their planning commission and then their governing board. And, you know, there's always the caveat, if somebody asks for a big change, we come back. But we're not anticipating any big changes. We always may have a few changes, but one of the reasons that we're not anticipating any big changes is because of what we consider just a really fortunate partnership that we've managed to strike up with the TRPA over the last couple of months. Since we first initiated, 2 big things have happened to spring the development of this plan forward. We were able to hire an environmental consultant who was able to sit down with me, and I was able to have the necessary conversations back and forth to really understand what needed to be done. And then once I was able to start developing some draft language, TRPA selected a staff member to work with us. That staff member is here tonight, Michael Conger. He's been invaluable to this effort. The iterative process back and forth, helping us understand what's necessary, really putting pen to paper and helping us develop the language that meets their expectations. A lot of that cleanup that we mentioned earlier, you know, removing older policies, I sometimes didn't know whether a policy was okay to remove or not. And it, you know, through consultation with Michael, I got to understand whether, yeah, that needs to stay or no, that can go. So Michael's here. I'd like to bring him up and introduce him, see if he has anything he'd like to add. Offer you to, you know, ask any questions to TRPA staff member about this process and where we're going. I would point to this information here. I don't know if you took advantage of this last year or not, but the TRPA website is excellent, and it's a wealth of information that has really helped me understand the expectations of this area plan and what the mission of the TRPA is for. So I've come to start directing most people to kind of start here. It's a great place to start. There is, of course, staff's recommending that you move this forward. There's a recommendation in the staff report for you to consider. But I'd like to stop now and give you a chance to meet Michael and ask Michael any questions, give him a chance to briefly speak with you, and then we'll see what your pleasure is for the evening. Thank you. Michael, do you have a word?
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Michael Conger. I'm a senior planner with the Long Range Planning Division for TRPA. And I just wanted to express how important area plans are to the implementation of the regional plan. Since our 2012 update, we came up with the area plan concept, and that was intended to replace the plan area statements and the community plans, and to make development and redevelopment of our town centers a lot easier. And so I just want to express thanks to Washoe County for taking a leadership effort in developing an area plan for this area. We couldn't develop these area plans without the local jurisdictions taking the lead, and so they should be commended for that. And I just look forward to continuing to work with Eric and Trevor and their staff as we continue to go through the collaboration process, the outreach process, and the hearings. So I'm available for any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, yes. Any questions from?
How does the work that we're doing here with Washoe County compare to what you are doing with the planning with the other communities and areas around the lake?
The way the area plans work, they can be vastly different. It's really up to local jurisdictions to develop the scope. So even geographies are different. We have some area plans that cover just a small area, like the Myers area plan covers a town center that's near an intersection and a few other neighborhoods, and that's it. And then we have the Placer County area plan, which is very similar to the approach Washoe County is using. The Placer County area plan covers all of Placer County's jurisdiction within the Tahoe Basin. So there's a variety, and then there's a variety in terms of the scope, how many changes are being made within the area plan. The issue with the scope is if you make a lot of changes, there could be environmental consequences of that you'd then have to study as well. So I hope that is responsive.
Well, to follow up on that, where are we relative to the coordination of these other areas with TRPA?
Well, so far we have 5 adopted area plans. All jurisdictions but Washoe County do have an adopted area plan, but the area plans don't cover the whole basin. We still have large gaps. A large portion of the city of South Lake Tahoe, most of El Dorado County, most of Douglas County don't currently have area plans.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, and we can come back to staff then. I'm going to open this up for public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do. Pete Todoroff, followed by Wayne Ford.
I'm going to have Wayne Ford speak.
Good evening, Chair and members of the commission. My name is Wayne Ford, 731 Linda Court, Incline Village, Nevada. I've been a residential designer in Nevada for over 30 years. I'm concerned about a couple areas of the plan where I believe the S should be within that plan for special use. On page 21 of the plan, it basically talks about what currently is in effect, and that's our building codes, the IBC and IRC 2018. There is a big conflict with a certain use that on page 104 says is in the plan and is allowed, and that's short-term rentals. These homes were built under exemptions under that adopted code. Those exemptions we all enjoy in terms of not having mandatory sprinkler systems, ADA compliance, and many of the other things that when you build a single-family home and you occupy it as a person living there, you get that benefit of not having to meet the same standards as a hotel or motel. When that use is changed arbitrarily in a plan and a special use is not invoked, that would involve a very detailed review of how that home now is transitioning into a business in a residential area, huge liabilities can occur. People aren't being protected as if they were going to a hotel or motel. So my concern is that we have that conflict. And people are using older homes that don't even meet the same electrical standards that a hotel and motel would meet today or have to upgrade to. So my concern is that within these regions of residential property, over 1,000 of these exist in Incline right now. Somewhere down the line, there's going to be an event where a loss of life will occur because the necessary codes for that use were not in place. And that is my concern about the county's exposure, the people that rent these homes coming up and not realizing the deficiencies that are within them, and they're using them for 3 or 4 day rental. There's a lot of these rules that are being put in place to try to control their behavior, but those rules don't cover the basic structure that they're walking into that has not been looked at in depth like it should to meet the kind of codes that it's being used at. So I want you to look at getting special use into this document as much as you can so that these individual locations can be looked at in a realistic way to protect the people using it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pete Todoroff, followed by Carol Black.
I'm not going to speak.
Oh, okay. I think Pete Todoroff just passed. Okay. Can you turn on the light thing before you turn on the timer? Okay. Have to be very careful with this time. I don't know if that'll work. That may not project real well, but that's from Eric's report. I hope he doesn't mind. And this is kind of his fact sheet. And it has 4 elements. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay. The fact sheet.
Excuse me. Eric, can you tell us what page that is? We can't really see. You know where that is in your plan? That's not on my plan.
Well, it's on the website.
It's not on the regional plan website.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, wrong thing. Well, it says, I'll read it to you. I thought it was Eric's. Preserve neighborhood character, promote redevelopment in town centers, consolidate and modernize existing plans, harmonize zoning regulations, and propose future developments. And you're right, it says regional plan. That's
part of
TRPA.
report for the Wednesday meeting.
There you go. Sorry, too many meetings. Okay. So, but anyway, there are two things here, which I think it does align with what you've done, that I wanted to talk about, even though I'm in the wrong meeting. One is about the neighborhood character, and the other is a little bit about harmonizing zoning requirements. You have two packets in front of you. We're not going to go through them. You'll read them at home. I'm sure you'll fall asleep on top of them, but look at my pretty pictures. One of the things, one of the packets talks about environmental impacts. This is all about short-term rentals, by the way, just in case you were wondering. The other talks a little bit about this project. I'm going to pull out a couple of slides. We'll see if these project. The first just talks about the balance between economic growth, tourism, profit, and at the expense of public safety, destruction of the community culture, neighborhoods, and the lake. We think this balance is out of whack right now with the short-term rentals, and that's part of what we're going to talk about. It's important to think about all of the impacts. There are concerns about all kinds of different things. I've left a major presentation that'll be in the record for the meeting that I'm sure you'll love reading. But there are many, many impacts of these short-term rentals that are disrupting our communities dramatically. I want to take one more slide out of the second one. This is about guardrails. There are some basic assumptions, that Eric has talked about that are basic premises. One is follow the TRPA pattern, and the other is no explicit zone changes. I'm here to tell you the two are mutually exclusive. If you follow the TRPA pattern, you will turn short-term rentals into a residential use. It is a business use. It has no business being considered a residential use. And if that's part of the plan here, I would argue it needs to be processed thoroughly so that we understand the impacts and what may happen as this gets translated, as it has happened with TRPA, into being embedded as a residential use. A special use permit will help. I would argue it's a business use that should require a special use permit to be in a residential community. Washoe County has varying rules. You tax it as a business. It's investors are buying these properties and using them as a business. It's a business. Health impacts. He talked about building impacts. I'm talking about health. I'm a retired physician. There's a page here that talks about all the health requirements that are applied to hotels, but none of these properties. So you read it and think about if that's where you want to stay. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry I got the wrong picture. Okay.
Mike Hess.
Mike Hess, 521 Spencer Way, Incline Village, Nevada. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I confess I am very confused. At the public hearings we had on STRs, Washoe County employees told us they would pick and choose from the TRPA compatibility rules. That bothers me. It bothers me because the STRs are not in the best interest of Incline Village and Crystal Bay, nor is it meeting TRPA policies. On page 104 of your area plan, it states, I quote, short-term rentals are allowed use in some neighborhoods. Let's be perfectly clear. Under the declaration of restrictions signed by real estate buyers and recorded in the county records, such use is not allowed in most of our neighborhoods. Should Washoe County take action to void the declaration of restrictions of our neighborhoods and its own zoning ordinances, it will lose. Such actions will require that neighbor sue neighbor. The first suit I expect in the next 90 days. That's how angry we are about STRs. Until STR regulations are presented and understood, it's hard to talk about the situation because we don't know what regulations Washoe County is going to adopt. Only through a process of special use permits should any STRs be allowed. At least this ensures proper hearings, diligent thought process, and the competent implementation of rules. Washoe should adopt the process of identifying and eliminating through special use permits these STRs that have been created without proper zoning, without legal authority. Almost 20% of our residents are becoming STRs. You don't want to live in our neighborhood. You've waited too long to implement rules for STRs. Thank you.
No further public comment.
Okay. Close the public comment, bring it back to the commission. Any questions of staff? You made your points. Anybody?
Well, make sure we have a clarification here. I'm sorry, what's that?
No, go ahead.
Of what we're talking about here tonight. I understand around the lake and in Incline Village, SDRs are a very hot button. But I think that we're only talking about the adopting, trying to come into line with the planning process with TRPA at this stage. That the statements about SDRs are far from being adopted. And I quite frankly, I agree completely around the lake that, SDRs have moved way past whatever they were 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 2 years ago. And something needs to be done to make it make sense from a neighborhood standpoint, from a safety standpoint, from being able to manage it standpoint. I think the communities who you've got, who's going to regulate it if you're going to regulate it? I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions there that are going to be really difficult to answer. So I just want to make sure that, what we're considering today is not any of that. Is that, am I correct in that?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
My understanding is we have two issues here. We're talking about an area plan update, and Washoe County has taken a separate track and working on codes and ordinances to address STRs on a totally separate track.
Okay.
So this action tonight allows for the continuation of the process, to the public comment, to working with TRPA.
Two tracks.
Two separate tracks. And if I'm misinformed, please correct me.
No, that's exactly correct. And again, I think there were some very well-stated comments, testimony provided tonight. But due to the complexity of short-term rentals, we didn't want this area plan process to be entangled with the short-term rentals. That is going through a different track. There's been a number of workshops with the residents of Incline, as well as a workshop down here in the Truckee Meadows to discuss specifically that direction for short-term rentals. Furthermore, that item will be heard at the County Commission in November. If I have the date right, I believe it's the 12th of November, where the County Commission will provide further direction for short-term rentals to county staff. But we are moving forward in parallel with both the area plan as well as an ordinance to address short-term rentals, and not just short-term rentals in Incline, but throughout Washoe County.
Thank you. Commissioner Donchak.
Well, you covered most of what I was going to ask, but I had a few more questions about just some phrasing in the document. In some sections, it says section and then reserved. Eric, what does that mean by reserved?
I want you to be specific.
I'll just pick one.
Good evening, Eric Young. The document that is attached for you to review is an early draft. I think we actually called it draft 1, version 1. And that was developed a little over, that's the first draft that really the whole thing came together over a month ago. We chose to put that in there in your staff report package so that you could see how different it looks from our existing plans and kind of get a sense of how this whole package is different from what exists down here in the meadows. But there's a lot of language in there that is continuing to be developed. There's placeholders in there throughout that document. There are some spots where I say reserved, where that was a question where I had to get with Michael to say, hey, do I need to keep this or can I get rid of it? And that was a spot where I would have put it if I needed to keep it. And so those kinds of things exist in this document. The next document that comes forward, the one that will be available at the workshop, will have all of that consolidated, fixed. None of that reserved language will be in there. It'll either be policy or not. So that's part of kind of a placeholder concept. But you'll find that document that's attached is continuing to develop as we speak. I mean, we've been working on it. There's a document that is a newer draft that's been available for the meeting that I mentioned we're having Wednesday at RPIC. The draft that they're seeing is actually newer than this one. The timeline for this staff report getting done and getting to you was way before that deadline. I think I drove Michael nuts and getting stuff to him late. But so the draft is continuing to develop. We attached that so that you could have an idea of what it's going to look like. But you'll find that kind of stuff throughout there.
So that would also answer the question where some sections where the code itself is highlighted in yellow?
Yes, where I have a continuing question, something I want to think about, a question I need to ask. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
One more question. Since there was so much concern about this section about short term, can we pull the verbiage and put reserved in there until you come back with some more defined information?
The version that, I can't remember whether it's 2 or 3, but the version that's available for Wednesday has that section removed.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions of staff?
I have a question.
Mr. Bruce?
My question is are you committed to bringing this back to the Planning Commission regardless? It seemed to me something of a question. You said if it's significant enough, et cetera, and it seems to me that the STRs and the question, the reserve things indicate to me that whatever is going to be big enough that you have to come back.
Yes, sir, we're coming back. We'll be back for an actual public hearing, for public input on the content and substance of the plan in either January or February.
Very
And
good.
all of that will, yes, sir.
Okay. Then, I mean, this is a procedural step to keep the process going
Yes, sir.
tonight.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's what my understanding is, and I hope everybody understands that our approval is not final. So, thank you.
The item tonight is not an approval. It's
Well, it's an
Just
approval
initiation.
to make,
It's
to
a it's a
initiate, et cetera.
recommendation to move forward.
And I understand that. But, I mean, we have to approve that, et cetera.
Chair Chesney?
Commissioner Haran. Oh, I'm sorry, Kate.
By removing it completely, does that mean that the STRs would then be regulated by just because that home happens to be in Washoe County? So it's taken completely out of this plan? Or is the intent to put it in once Washoe County determines what they're doing with STRs?
That's a good question. Thank you, Commissioner. The intent is to make sure that the two processes don't get intertwined and cause,
Delays?
well, not just a delay, but complication they have to, you can't have one code saying one thing and another saying another. So the intent is to let the STR public process work its way through, find out what the county intends to propose for its STR ordinance. At that point, we'll know if we need to do something special for Tahoe or if one ordinance is possible. We don't know that. We have to let it work out. If at the end of the day, we have to come put something back in here, we'll do it. We're committed to doing what's necessary for STRs. But we have two parallel processes, and our hope is that the ordinance can work, can be sufficient for everybody. But if it's not, if after the development of that goes through and the board looks at it and says, yeah, this works for most people, but we're going to need you to do a little extra for Tahoe, then that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Haran.
Well, I'm probably going to repeat what everybody's saying up here, but I want to make sure one more time on this, that we are not endorsing the attachment to these initiations.
Which attachment?
That's right, you're not.
Okay, I want to make sure we are very clear. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Any discussion amongst the commission?
I think that these things I can't answer. I think that each of us have expressed a concern about that we have not got enough information to approve anything other than the initiation of this process. Correct. And we're not endorsing any of the statements in here until they get better. Okay. I'm done.
Are you sure? Okay. All right. Seeing there's no further discussion, call for a motion.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission, 1, adopt the resolution attached as Exhibit A to the staff report to initiate the development code amendments, the master plan map and text amendments, the regulatory zone map amendments, and other amendments as described in the staff recommendations, and 2, authorize the chair to sign the resolution on behalf of the Planning Commission. I further move to direct staff to bring the amendments back to this commission for a hearing within 125 days of today's date.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Bruce and a second by Commissioner Donchek. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Unanimous. Thank you.
Just a comment, I think that the comments brought up by the public are very valid, and I hope that the staff will continue to work with them to address those issues.
Okay. So, let's see, Chair Commission. Do we have any any future agenda items? Any requests for information from staff? Director of Legal Counsel's reports?
Nothing to report.
Okay, any legal information?
I have nothing else for tonight.
Okay, any general public comment?
No public comment.
Seeing no public comment, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, we are adjourned.
Thank you.